Have you ever felt like the version of yourself that the world sees is not the same person you are when you are completely alone? Perhaps there have been moments when you smiled even though you felt broken inside, agreed with opinions you did not truly believe, or acted in ways that earned approval from others while leaving you strangely dissatisfied. These experiences are far more common than most people realize. According to Carl Jung, every human being develops what he called the persona, a social mask that helps us navigate the world. This mask is not necessarily deceptive or evil. From the earliest years of life, we begin learning which parts of ourselves are welcomed and which parts are discouraged. A child quickly notices that certain behaviors receive praise while others invite criticism. A smile may earn affection, while anger may be met with disapproval. Curiosity may be celebrated in one environment and punished in another. Slowly, often without any conscious awareness, the child adapts. Certain traits are emphasized while others are hidden away. The process seems harmless because it helps the child belong to a family, a school, and eventually a wider community. However, over time these adaptations form a social identity that may only partially reflect the person's authentic nature. As we grow older, the persona becomes more sophisticated. We learn how to present ourselves differently depending on the situation. At work, we may appear professional and confident. With friends, we may become humorous and relaxed. On social media, we often display carefully selected aspects of our lives while concealing our struggles and insecurities. These different presentations are not necessarily dishonest. They are simply roles we play in response to social expectations. Problems arise when we begin to believe that these roles are the entirety of who we are. Many people spend years investing energy into maintaining an image. They strive to appear successful, intelligent, strong, attractive, or agreeable because these qualities are rewarded by society. Gradually, they become attached to the approval that comes from performing these roles well. The fear of rejection becomes so powerful that authenticity starts to feel dangerous. Instead of asking what they truly want, they ask what will be accepted. Instead of expressing genuine emotions, they display the emotions that seem appropriate. Instead of living according to their inner truth, they live according to external expectations. This creates a deep psychological conflict. The authentic self does not disappear simply because it has been hidden. It remains alive beneath the surface, carrying desires, feelings, dreams, fears, and aspects of personality that have never been fully expressed. The more a person identifies with the persona, the greater the distance between the outer image and the inner reality. Eventually, this gap can become so large that a person feels disconnected from their own life. They may achieve success, receive admiration, and fulfill every expectation placed upon them, yet still experience a persistent sense of emptiness. Many people describe this feeling as though something essential is missing. They cannot explain why they feel unfulfilled because, from an external perspective, everything appears to be in order. They have careers, relationships, accomplishments, and social status. Yet beneath the surface there is a quiet dissatisfaction. This dissatisfaction is often a signal that the soul is demanding attention. It is a reminder that the person has become too identified with a mask and too distant from their authentic nature. The persona is especially powerful because society often rewards it. People who successfully conform to social expectations are frequently praised and admired. They are seen as responsible, respectable, and accomplished. Meanwhile, expressing unconventional thoughts, emotions, or desires can attract criticism and misunderstanding. Because of this, many individuals become trapped in a cycle where they sacrifice authenticity in exchange for acceptance. The more approval they receive, the harder it becomes to question whether the identity they have built truly belongs to them. This dynamic can affect every aspect of life. In relationships, people may present a version of themselves designed to be loved rather than revealing who they genuinely are. In careers, they may pursue paths that bring prestige instead of fulfillment. In personal development, they may focus on meeting external standards rather than exploring their inner world. Over time, these choices accumulate, creating a life that looks successful from the outside but feels hollow from within. One of the most dangerous consequences of over-identifying with a persona is the loss of self-awareness. When a mask is worn long enough, it can begin to feel natural. The individual forgets that it is a mask at all. They become convinced that the role they play is their true identity. This makes genuine self-discovery extremely difficult because the person no longer knows where the performance ends and the authentic self begins. Yet life has a way of challenging these illusions. Moments of crisis often expose the limitations of the persona. A failed relationship, A career setback, a period of depression, or a profound sense of meaninglessness can force a person to confront questions they have been avoiding. Who am I beneath my achievements? Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly value? What parts of myself have I hidden in order to fit in? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are essential for growth. Jung believed that psychological health requires more than simply functioning well in society. It requires a connection with the deeper layers of the self. This does not mean abandoning all social roles or rejecting civilization. The goal is not to destroy the persona but to recognize it for what it is. A healthy persona is a useful tool, not a prison. It allows us to interact effectively with the world while remaining connected to our authentic nature. True freedom begins when a person becomes aware of the mask they are wearing. This awareness creates space for choice. Instead of automatically conforming to expectations, they can decide which roles genuinely reflect their values and which ones do not. They can express emotions honestly rather than suppressing them. They can pursue goals that resonate with their inner desires instead of blindly following social definitions of success. The journey toward authenticity requires courage because it often involves disappointing people who have become attached to the persona. Friends, family members, and colleagues may resist changes that challenge their expectations. Yet remaining trapped behind a mask ultimately leads to a life that belongs more to others than to oneself. Authenticity is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is about aligning one's outer life with one's inner truth. As this process unfolds, many people discover a sense of vitality that had been missing for years. They feel more present, more alive, and more connected to their emotions. Relationships become deeper because they are no longer based solely on performance. Decisions become clearer because they arise from genuine values rather than external pressure. Life gains a sense of meaning because the individual is no longer living as a character in someone else's story. The persona will always exist. It is a natural and necessary part of human life. The challenge is to remember that it is only one part of who we are. Beneath every social role lies a deeper self waiting to be acknowledged. The moment we stop mistaking the mask for our true identity, we begin the journey toward wholeness. We begin to reclaim the parts of ourselves that were hidden, neglected, or forgotten. And in doing so, we move closer to a life that is not merely accepted by others, but genuinely lived as our own. If the persona is the mask we wear to gain acceptance, then the shadow is everything we hide to avoid rejection. It is the unseen side of our personality, the collection of thoughts, emotions, desires, fears, and traits that we have learned to suppress throughout our lives. According to Carl Jung, every human being carries a shadow. It is not a sign of weakness or evil. It is simply the part of ourselves that has been pushed out of conscious awareness because we believed it was unacceptable. The tragedy is that what we refuse to acknowledge does not disappear. Instead, it continues to influence our lives from the unconscious, shaping our behavior in ways we rarely understand. From the moment we are born, we begin receiving messages about who we should and should not be. Parents, teachers, friends, culture, and society all contribute to this silent education. A child who cries too much may be told to stop being sensitive. Another who expresses anger may be punished for being aggressive. Someone who asks too many questions may be labeled difficult or rebellious. Over time, these repeated experiences teach the child that certain qualities are acceptable while others are not. Rather than risk rejection, the child hides those unwanted traits deep within the unconscious. This process happens so gradually that most people never notice it. They simply assume they have become mature or civilized. In reality, they have often become divided. One part of them is allowed to exist openly, while another part is locked away in darkness. The conscious personality continues to grow, but the rejected aspects remain alive beneath the surface, waiting for opportunities to express themselves. This hidden collection of rejected qualities is what Jung called the shadow. Many people misunderstand the shadow by believing it contains only negative emotions or immoral desires. While it certainly includes anger, jealousy, fear, selfishness, and resentment, it also contains positive qualities that have been suppressed. Someone raised in an environment where confidence was seen as arrogance may bury their ambition. A person taught that creativity is impractical may hide their artistic gifts. Someone constantly told to obey authority may suppress their independence and leadership. The shadow does not merely hide our darkness. It also conceals our greatest strengths when those strengths were discouraged or rejected during our development. The reason the shadow is so powerful is because it operates outside conscious awareness. We may believe we are making rational choices while unconscious forces quietly influence our decisions. A person who constantly denies their anger may suddenly explode over something insignificant. Someone who insists they never feel jealous may secretly resent the success of others. Another who claims to be completely selfless may unconsciously manipulate people to receive appreciation. These reactions often surprise us because they seem inconsistent with the image we have of ourselves. In reality, they are expressions of the shadow demanding recognition. One of the most fascinating ways the shadow reveals itself is through projection. Projection occurs when we unconsciously attribute our own hidden qualities to someone else. Instead of recognizing those traits within ourselves, we see them in others. Have you ever met someone who irritated you instantly without knowing why? Perhaps their confidence seemed arrogant, their vulnerability seemed weak, or their ambition seemed selfish. While some criticisms may be justified, Jung believed that intense emotional reactions often point toward our own unconscious material. The qualities we condemn most passionately in others may reflect aspects of ourselves that we have refused to accept. Projection can affect every relationship we have. It shapes friendships, romantic partnerships, family conflicts, and even political beliefs. Entire groups of people may project their fears onto other groups, creating unnecessary conflict and division. On an individual level, projection prevents genuine self-understanding because we remain focused on changing others instead of examining ourselves. The shadow continues operating unchecked, while we remain convinced that the real problem always exists outside us. Dreams also provide valuable clues about the shadow. Jung believed that dreams speak the language of the unconscious through symbols and images. Dark figures, mysterious strangers, abandoned places, dangerous animals, or recurring nightmares may all represent aspects of the shadow seeking attention. Rather than viewing these dreams as meaningless, Jung encouraged people to approach them with curiosity. The unconscious is not trying to frighten us. It is attempting to restore psychological balance by revealing what consciousness has ignored. Ignoring the shadow comes at a significant psychological cost. The more we deny certain emotions or desires, the stronger they become beneath the surface. Suppressed anger may eventually turn into bitterness or depression. Hidden fear may develop into anxiety. Unacknowledged insecurity may transform into constant competitiveness or perfectionism. The unconscious continually seeks expression, and if we refuse to acknowledge it consciously, it often emerges in destructive ways. This is why people sometimes sabotage their own relationships, careers, or personal goals without understanding why. The shadow is acting through them while remaining invisible to their conscious mind. Jung argued that true psychological growth requires shadow integration. Integration does not mean acting out every impulse or giving in to destructive behavior. It means becoming aware of these hidden aspects without judging or rejecting them. When we acknowledge our anger, we gain the ability to express it constructively rather than explosively. When we admit our fears, they lose much of their unconscious power. When we recognize our envy, it can become motivation instead of resentment. Awareness transforms unconscious forces into conscious choices. Shadow integration also demands radical honesty. It requires asking uncomfortable questions about ourselves. What qualities do I criticize most in other people? What emotions do I refuse to admit? What parts of my personality have I hidden to gain approval? Which dreams did I abandon because someone convinced me they were impossible? These questions can be deeply unsettling because they challenge the identity we have carefully constructed. Yet they are also the beginning of genuine freedom. This process is rarely comfortable. Meeting the shadow often feels like confronting a stranger living within us. We may discover selfish motives behind generous actions or hidden fears beneath apparent confidence. We may realize that our greatest strengths have been buried alongside our greatest weaknesses. These discoveries can be painful, but they are essential. The goal is not perfection. The goal is wholeness. A person who knows both their light and their darkness possesses far greater self-control than someone who believes they are entirely good while remaining blind to their unconscious impulses. As we begin integrating the shadow, something remarkable happens. We become less reactive, less defensive, and more compassionate toward ourselves and others. We stop expecting perfection because we recognize the complexity of human nature. We become capable of making conscious choices instead of being driven by hidden psychological forces. The energy once spent suppressing unwanted emotions becomes available for creativity, purpose, and authentic relationships. Perhaps the greatest gift of shadow integration is authenticity. No longer trapped by the need to appear perfect, we become comfortable acknowledging both our strengths and our flaws. We stop pretending to be someone we are not. Instead of fearing our darkness, we learn from it. Instead of denying our weaknesses, we transform them into sources of wisdom. Instead of hiding our potential, we allow it to emerge naturally. Carl Jung believed that no one becomes enlightened by imagining only light. Real transformation happens when we have the courage to confront the darkness within ourselves. The shadow is not an enemy waiting to destroy us. It is a forgotten part of our humanity waiting to be understood. The moment we stop running from it and begin listening to what it has to teach, we take one of the most important steps toward becoming whole. Only by embracing every part of ourselves can we discover the authentic person hidden beneath years of fear, conditioning, and self-deception. What if the person you have been searching for your entire life has been within you all along? What if the peace, purpose, and fulfillment you seek are not hidden somewhere in the outside world but buried beneath years of conditioning, fear, and false identities? Carl Jung believed that every human being carries within them a deeper center of the psyche that he called the self. This is not the ego, the personality, or the image you present to the world. The self represents your complete psychological reality, the harmonious union of every part of your being. Discovering it is not a single event but a lifelong process that Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming who you were truly meant to be. Most people confuse the ego with their true identity. The ego is the part of the mind that says, "This is who I am." It identifies with your name, career, beliefs, achievements, opinions, and social roles. It is necessary because it helps you function in everyday life. However, the ego sees only a small portion of the entire psyche. It is like standing on a tiny island while an enormous ocean stretches beyond the horizon. The self includes not only the conscious mind but also the unconscious, the shadow, forgotten memories, hidden talents, and the deeper wisdom that guides your life from within. The problem is that modern society encourages people to strengthen the ego while neglecting the self. We are taught to build successful careers, gain recognition, earn approval, and create impressive identities. From an early age, we learn to ask questions like, "How can I be admired?" or "How can I fit in?" Very few people are encouraged to ask a far more important question: who am I beneath all these roles? As a result, countless individuals spend decades building an identity that appears successful from the outside while feeling empty inside. This inner emptiness often becomes impossible to ignore. A person may achieve every goal they once dreamed of and still feel dissatisfied. They may find themselves wondering why success brings only temporary happiness. They may feel disconnected from their work, relationships, or even themselves. According to Jung, these moments are not signs of failure. They are invitations from the self. The unconscious is signaling that the life being lived no longer reflects the deeper truth of who that person is. Individuation begins the moment we become willing to question the identity we have accepted for ourselves. This is not an easy process because it challenges everything that once gave us certainty. We begin asking uncomfortable questions. Which beliefs truly belong to me? Which dreams were chosen by my own heart, and which were inherited from my family or society? How much of my personality is authentic, and how much is simply a performance designed to gain acceptance? These questions can feel unsettling because they threaten the stability of the ego. Yet without them, genuine transformation cannot begin. Jung believed that individuation requires integrating every part of the psyche rather than rejecting or suppressing it. Earlier in life, we develop a persona to fit into society and push unwanted qualities into the shadow. As adults, these divisions create inner conflict. The path toward the self involves bringing these separated parts back together. Instead of pretending to be perfect, we acknowledge our imperfections. Instead of hiding our fears, we understand them. Instead of rejecting difficult emotions, we listen to what they are trying to teach us. Gradually, the fragmented pieces of our personality begin to form a unified whole. This journey demands courage because the ego naturally resists change. It prefers certainty, even if that certainty leads to unhappiness. The ego fears losing control, so it clings to familiar identities and routines. It whispers that change is dangerous and that authenticity may lead to rejection. Yet the self speaks in a quieter voice. It calls us toward growth, even when growth feels uncomfortable. It encourages us to leave behind lives that no longer reflect our deepest values. Listening to that voice requires patience, honesty, and a willingness to walk into the unknown. Many people imagine self-discovery as a sudden moment of enlightenment, but Jung saw it differently. Individuation unfolds gradually through countless experiences. Every challenge, every failure, every relationship, and every moment of suffering contains the potential for greater self-understanding. Difficult experiences often become the very events that push us toward authenticity. A painful breakup may reveal emotional patterns we never recognized. Losing a job may force us to question whether we were pursuing someone else's dream instead of our own. Even periods of loneliness can become opportunities to reconnect with the parts of ourselves we ignored while seeking external approval. Dreams play an especially important role in individuation. Jung believed that dreams are messages from the unconscious, offering guidance when the conscious mind becomes trapped in limited perspectives. Symbols appearing in dreams often point toward hidden aspects of the self that are seeking integration. A recurring journey, an unknown guide, a mysterious house, or an encounter with a wise figure may all represent stages of psychological development. Rather than dismissing these experiences as random, Jung encouraged people to approach them with curiosity and respect. Another essential part of individuation is learning to live according to inner values instead of external expectations. This does not mean rejecting society or becoming isolated. Instead, it means making decisions based on genuine conviction rather than fear of judgment. An individuated person may still fulfill responsibilities, maintain relationships, and contribute to society, but they do so from a place of authenticity rather than obligation. Their actions arise from who they truly are instead of who they think they should be. One of the greatest transformations that occurs during individuation is the development of inner peace. Much of human anxiety comes from living divided against ourselves. We exhaust enormous amounts of energy trying to maintain false identities, suppress unwanted emotions, and satisfy impossible expectations. As these internal conflicts begin to dissolve, life feels lighter. Decisions become clearer because they are aligned with personal truth rather than social pressure. Relationships become deeper because honesty replaces performance. Work becomes more meaningful because it reflects genuine purpose instead of external validation. Individuation also changes the way we see other people. As we become more aware of our own complexity, we become less judgmental toward others. We recognize that everyone carries hidden fears, unhealed wounds, and unconscious struggles. Compassion naturally replaces harsh criticism because we understand that every individual is engaged in their own psychological journey. This broader perspective allows healthier relationships built on understanding instead of unrealistic expectations. Importantly, individuation never truly ends. The self cannot be completely possessed or fully understood because human consciousness continues evolving throughout life. Every stage of life presents new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth. The person you become at 30 will not be the same person you become at 50 or 70. The journey continues as long as life continues, constantly inviting deeper awareness and greater integration. Carl Jung believed that the greatest privilege of life is becoming who you truly are. This statement sounds simple, yet it contains profound wisdom. Most people inherit identities without ever questioning them. They follow paths chosen by others, measure success according to external standards, and spend years chasing approval. Individuation asks us to do something radically different. It asks us to turn inward, to listen to the quiet voice beneath the noise of society, and to discover the person waiting there all along. Finding the self does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming whole. It means accepting both your strengths and your weaknesses, your confidence and your vulnerability, your successes and your failures. It means embracing every part of your humanity without pretending to be someone you're not. The moment you begin living from that place of wholeness, life changes in ways that external success alone can never provide. You no longer seek meaning because you become connected to its source within yourself. And in that connection, you finally discover the freedom, authenticity, and purpose that you were searching for from the very beginning. Have you ever wondered why certain stories seem timeless? Why the same heroes, villains, mentors, and mysterious figures appear across different cultures, religions, and civilizations? Why do people from opposite sides of the world dream about similar symbols, admire similar characters, and struggle with remarkably similar fears? Carl Jung believed this was not a coincidence. Beneath our individual experiences lies a deeper psychological reality that connects every human being. He called it the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of inherited psychological patterns shared by all people throughout history. Within this hidden dimension of the mind exist powerful forces known as archetypes, universal patterns that silently shape the way we think, feel, behave, and understand the world. Most people believe that their personality is entirely the result of genetics, personal experiences, or the environment in which they were raised. While these factors certainly influence who we become, Jung argued that something much deeper is at work. Long before we learn language, culture, or social rules, the human mind already contains ancient psychological structures. These structures are not memories of specific events but inherited patterns that influence how we perceive reality. Just as every person is born with a biological instinct to breathe, eat, and seek safety, we are also born with psychological instincts that guide our emotions, relationships, and personal development. Jung described the unconscious as having two levels. The first is the personal unconscious, which contains forgotten memories, repressed emotions, unresolved conflicts, and experiences unique to each individual. The second is the collective unconscious, which goes far beyond personal experience. It is shared by all humanity, carrying the accumulated psychological wisdom of countless generations. Although we cannot directly see this hidden layer of the mind, we experience its influence every day through dreams, myths, religious symbols, works of art, literature, and even the choices we make without fully understanding why. The language of the collective unconscious is expressed through archetypes. Archetypes are not fixed personalities but universal patterns that appear in different forms throughout history. They shape our imagination, our aspirations, and the roles we naturally adopt in life. One of the most recognizable archetypes is the hero. The hero represents courage, transformation, and the willingness to face the unknown. Whether it is an ancient warrior, a modern superhero, or an ordinary person overcoming extraordinary challenges, the hero reflects the universal human desire to grow through struggle. This is why heroic stories continue to inspire people regardless of culture or time. Deep within ourselves, we recognize the hero because that pattern already exists within our own psyche. Another important archetype is the wise old man or wise woman. This figure symbolizes wisdom, guidance, insight, and inner knowledge. Throughout mythology and literature, this archetype appears as the teacher who helps the hero understand the deeper meaning of life. In reality, this archetype often emerges through mentors, spiritual leaders, psychologists, philosophers, or even moments of profound intuition. Sometimes the wisdom we seek from others is actually an invitation to discover the wisdom already present within ourselves. The caregiver is another powerful archetype that influences countless lives. It represents compassion, protection, sacrifice, and unconditional support. People strongly influenced by this pattern naturally care for others and often find purpose in helping those around them. While this can be a beautiful expression of love, it also carries risks. When the caregiver dominates the personality without balance, individuals may neglect their own needs, lose their identity in service to others, or become emotionally exhausted. Jung believed that every archetype contains both positive potential and hidden dangers when taken to extremes. The rebel is equally significant. This archetype challenges authority, questions tradition, and seeks freedom from limitation. Throughout history, rebels have transformed societies by refusing to accept injustice or outdated beliefs. They inspire innovation, creativity, and social change. However, when this archetype becomes unbalanced, rebellion may turn into constant conflict, destruction, or rejection of all structure without offering meaningful alternatives. Individuation requires recognizing both the strengths and limitations of every archetype rather than allowing any single one to dominate our identity. One of Jung's most profound insights was that individuals often unconsciously identify with only one or two dominant archetypes while ignoring the others. A person may spend their entire life trying to be the hero, believing they must always be strong, fearless, and capable. They may hide vulnerability because it does not fit the heroic image they have created. Another person may become trapped in the caregiver role, constantly placing others first while denying their own emotional needs. Someone deeply influenced by the rebel may reject every form of authority without recognizing when discipline or cooperation is necessary. When one archetype controls the personality, psychological imbalance inevitably follows. Dreams provide one of the clearest windows into these unconscious patterns. Jung believed dreams are messages from the psyche, communicating through symbolic images rather than ordinary language. A mysterious guide appearing in a dream may represent the wise one. A dangerous journey through a dark forest may symbolize the hero's path toward transformation. A powerful king, nurturing mother, abandoned child, or trickster figure may all reflect archetypal energies seeking expression. These symbols often appear without conscious effort because they emerge from the collective unconscious itself. Myths and fairy tales also reveal the remarkable consistency of archetypes across civilizations. Ancient Greek mythology, Egyptian legends, Native American traditions, Eastern philosophies, and modern films all contain strikingly similar psychological patterns. The names, settings, and cultures differ, but the underlying stories remain surprisingly familiar. The hero leaves home, faces trials, receives guidance, confronts darkness, discovers hidden strength, and returns transformed. Jung believed these recurring narratives continue to captivate humanity because they mirror the psychological journey taking place within every individual. Archetypes influence our daily lives far more than we realize. They affect the careers we choose, the relationships we form, the leaders we admire, and even the qualities we seek in ourselves. Some people naturally gravitate toward leadership because the king or queen archetype is strongly active within them. Others feel called to creativity through the artist archetype or seek knowledge through the sage. Without awareness, however, these patterns can unconsciously control our decisions. We may spend years pursuing goals that satisfy an archetype rather than fulfilling our authentic psychological needs. One of the greatest dangers arises when we mistake an archetype for our complete identity. A successful business leader may become entirely identified with the ruler archetype, believing they must always maintain control. A spiritual teacher may become trapped in the wise one archetype, fearing any admission of uncertainty. An artist may believe they must constantly suffer to remain creative because they identify too strongly with the wounded creator. These rigid identities limit personal growth because they prevent other aspects of the psyche from developing. Jung believed that psychological maturity requires recognizing these unconscious patterns rather than being controlled by them. Awareness transforms archetypes from invisible forces into valuable guides. Instead of unconsciously acting out a role, we begin understanding why certain situations attract us, why specific challenges repeat throughout our lives, and why certain stories resonate so deeply with our hearts. We realize that these patterns are not prisons but maps pointing toward greater self-understanding. As we become conscious of the archetypes operating within us, we gain the ability to create balance. The hero learns vulnerability. The caregiver practices self-care. The rebel discovers responsibility. The wise one remains open to learning. Each archetype contributes something essential to psychological wholeness, but none should dominate the entire personality. Individuation is not about eliminating these ancient patterns. It is about integrating them into a harmonious whole where every aspect of the psyche has its rightful place. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious constantly communicates with us, inviting us to become more aware of ourselves. Through dreams, symbols, intuition, myths, relationships, and recurring life experiences, the psyche offers clues about the hidden forces shaping our destiny. The question is not whether archetypes influence our lives. They already do. The real question is whether we will remain unconscious of their power or choose to understand them. The moment we begin recognizing these timeless patterns within ourselves, we stop living on psychological autopilot. We become active participants in our own transformation, guided not only by the demands of the external world but also by the profound wisdom hidden within the depths of the human soul. What happens when a person spends an entire lifetime running away from themselves? What is the price of ignoring the voice that quietly whispers beneath the noise of everyday life? Carl Jung believed that the greatest tragedy is not failure, poverty, or even death. The greatest tragedy is living without ever discovering who you truly are. A person may appear successful, admired, and accomplished while remaining completely disconnected from their authentic self. On the surface, everything seems perfect. Yet deep within, there is an emptiness that no achievement, relationship, or possession can ever fill. This is the hidden cost of ignoring your true self. Modern society encourages people to chase external success. We are taught to earn more money, gain recognition, build impressive careers, and collect symbols of achievement. While none of these goals are inherently wrong, they become dangerous when they replace the deeper journey of self-discovery. Many people spend decades climbing ladders they never chose, pursuing dreams that belong to someone else, and living according to expectations they never questioned. They become experts at surviving but strangers to themselves. At first, this disconnection may seem harmless. Life moves forward as expected. Responsibilities are fulfilled, routines are established, and the years quietly pass. Yet beneath this ordinary existence, something begins to stir. There is a persistent feeling that life lacks meaning. Moments of joy become increasingly rare, while anxiety, restlessness, and dissatisfaction slowly grow stronger. People often try to silence these feelings by working harder, buying more possessions, seeking constant entertainment, or chasing temporary pleasures. But no matter how many distractions they find, the inner emptiness eventually returns. Jung believed this emptiness is not a punishment. It is a message from the unconscious. The psyche is attempting to restore balance by reminding us that something essential has been neglected. Just as physical pain signals an injury to the body, psychological suffering often signals a separation from the authentic self. Unfortunately, instead of listening to this message, many people spend their lives trying to escape it. One of the most common consequences of ignoring the true self is chronic anxiety. Anxiety is not always caused by external circumstances. Sometimes it arises because the conscious personality is living in conflict with the deeper needs of the psyche. A person may remain in a career they secretly dislike, maintain relationships that no longer reflect who they are, or suppress emotions they have never allowed themselves to feel. The unconscious continually resists these compromises, creating inner tension that eventually manifests as fear, stress, or emotional exhaustion. Depression can emerge in a similar way. While depression has many biological and psychological causes, Jung believed that for some individuals it represents the soul withdrawing its energy from a life that no longer feels authentic. The person loses motivation, purpose, and vitality because they have become disconnected from what truly gives their existence meaning. They may continue functioning outwardly while feeling emotionally empty inside. Every day begins to feel like a repetition of the one before it, and the future appears increasingly meaningless. Another consequence of avoiding individuation is the repetition of destructive life patterns. Have you ever noticed how some people repeatedly enter unhealthy relationships, sabotage promising opportunities, or make the same painful mistakes despite promising themselves they will change? Jung argued that unconscious patterns continue directing our lives until they are brought into awareness. The lessons we refuse to learn consciously often return in different forms. New faces appear, new circumstances develop, but the underlying psychological conflict remains unchanged. This is why many individuals feel trapped in cycles they cannot explain. They wonder why they always attract the wrong partners, why every job eventually becomes unbearable, or why they never feel satisfied regardless of what they achieve. The answer often lies not in external circumstances but within the unconscious itself. Until hidden fears, unresolved wounds, and neglected aspects of the personality are acknowledged, life continues repeating the same lessons in different disguises. Ignoring the true self also damages relationships. When people do not know themselves, they cannot fully know others. Instead of forming genuine connections, they build relationships based on their persona, seeking validation rather than authenticity. They become afraid to reveal vulnerability because they fear rejection. As a result, intimacy remains shallow. Even when surrounded by friends or loved ones, they may experience profound loneliness because no one truly knows who they are beneath the mask. Resentment often becomes another hidden symptom of self-abandonment. When individuals spend years sacrificing their authentic desires to satisfy the expectations of others, they gradually accumulate silent frustration. Sometimes this resentment is directed outward. They blame family members, employers, society, or circumstances for their unhappiness. At other times, the resentment turns inward, becoming self-criticism, guilt, or self-destructive behavior. In either case, the deeper problem remains the same. They have abandoned themselves. The body itself may begin expressing what the mind refuses to acknowledge. Chronic stress, exhaustion, insomnia, tension, and various psychosomatic symptoms can sometimes reflect prolonged psychological conflict. While physical illnesses should always be taken seriously and evaluated medically, Jung believed that the connection between mind and body should never be ignored. The unconscious often communicates through emotional and physical signals when conscious awareness refuses to listen. Perhaps the greatest danger of ignoring the true self is reaching the end of life with the painful realization that you never truly lived. Many people become so focused on meeting external expectations that they postpone their authentic lives indefinitely. They tell themselves they will pursue their passions later, express their true feelings later, or become their real selves after achieving one more goal. But time quietly continues moving forward. One day they look back and realize they spent years performing roles instead of living their own story. Jung often emphasized that the unconscious grows stronger when ignored. The parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge do not disappear. They simply become more influential from the shadows. Fear becomes stronger when denied. Anger becomes more destructive when suppressed. Unfulfilled dreams become deeper regrets when continuously postponed. The longer we avoid confronting ourselves, the more painful the eventual confrontation becomes. Fortunately, Jung also believed that transformation remains possible at any stage of life. No matter how long someone has lived behind a persona or ignored their authentic nature, the journey toward individuation can begin with a single moment of honesty. That moment often starts with a simple question: is the life I am living truly mine? This question has the power to change everything because it opens the door to conscious reflection instead of unconscious repetition. The path toward authenticity is rarely easy. It requires letting go of identities that once felt safe. It demands facing fears that have been buried for years. It asks us to accept responsibility for choices we previously blamed on circumstances. Yet every step taken toward the true self brings a corresponding sense of freedom. Instead of living according to inherited expectations, we begin creating lives that reflect our deepest values. Instead of reacting automatically to unconscious patterns, we make conscious decisions. Instead of seeking constant approval, we discover inner confidence that does not depend on external validation. This transformation does not eliminate life's challenges. Pain, uncertainty, and failure remain part of the human experience. The difference is that these difficulties no longer separate us from ourselves. They become opportunities for growth rather than reasons for despair. A person connected to their authentic self possesses an inner stability that cannot be easily destroyed by changing circumstances because their identity is rooted in something deeper than success or failure. Carl Jung believed that the purpose of life is not to become perfect but to become whole. Wholeness is achieved when we stop running from ourselves and begin embracing every aspect of our humanity. It means accepting both strength and weakness, confidence and vulnerability, joy and sorrow. It means recognizing that the life worth living is not the one designed to impress others but the one that honestly reflects who we are. The cost of ignoring your true self is a life lived in quiet conflict, endless dissatisfaction, and unconscious repetition. The reward for facing yourself, however, is something infinitely greater. It is the freedom to live authentically, to make choices aligned with your deepest values, to build meaningful relationships, and to experience a sense of purpose that cannot be purchased or borrowed from anyone else. The moment you choose to know yourself instead of merely pleasing the world, you begin the greatest journey a human being can ever undertake. That journey is not toward becoming someone new. It is toward finally becoming the person you have always been.